Happy spring! I have my wonderful and beautiful fake spring flowers next to me as a little prop. I hope that you enjoyed that. Today I want to talk about, first off I have to say that spring is my favorite holiday. Spring is my favorite season out of all five. I don't care. There could be 30. In spring will be my favorite one. I think that it is the beginning of new chapters. It is a time to reinvent yourself. Finally getting the sun outside. You can get a tan on your face. Oh my gosh, it's wonderful. Of course you have things blooming, so you have allergies, but once you ignore that, you're fine. But something that's even more fun than the sun outside, to me, is the books that can be read in the springtime. So a lot of people talk about winter TBR, fall TBR, summer TBR, but we need to talk more about the spring TBR because I feel like it has a little bit more of a niche category, but it is beautiful nonetheless, because to me, whenever I think of a perfect spring book, I think of Tom Lake by Ann Patchett. And if any of you have not read Tom Lake by Ann Patchett, I'm not going to get into that because it's not included in my spring TBR because I have already read it, but I would love to redo that because I actually listened to it on audio. So if you would love a good audiobook, I would definitely recommend that. Just the ambiance and the setting of that book is so spring and summer. It's a very good book, so I would recommend that. But that's a good example of a spring book. And so today I want to talk about the books that I want to be reading or rereading in this spring. So let's get into it. Okay, my first book that I want to read this spring is A Man Called Ove. I have a lot of history with this book. I have tried to read this book probably 4 times, but every single time it has been in the midst of a book slump or a mini slump, and every single time I go to pick it up, I'm always like, oh, I don't feel like it. I'd rather get to my phone or whatever. And I don't have it physically, so I keep reading it on my iPad, and I'm not great at reading anything that's technology because I always get distracted and I always go do something else. So I think I would love to thrift this book because I know that it's a really popular book, so I know I could find it for cheap. I would love to read that this spring. I think just the story of it reminds me so much of spring because when you talk about spring, we talk about new chapters of life. This book follows a man called Ove, and this book starts off with Ove. He is very, very, very particular about the way that he likes his house kept, the way that he likes his neighborhood to be kept up with. He's very big on everyone following every single rule. He's part of the neighborhood committee. I think he might be the president, and he has very specific rules that he likes for other people to follow, and he gets really frustrated whenever they don't. And I know that this book does continue, and I think maybe there's a friendship that sparks between him and other neighbors that he normally wouldn't expect to happen. And I've just heard a lot of people talk about how endearing that this book is, and I love sweet and things like that. So I just feel like this would be really fun to finally actually sit down and read it and give this book a proper chance because I know that I would love it. The next book I have on this list is called The Heir Apparent. Can't remember most of the authors' names because I didn't write them in my journals. And whenever I put them up here, if you're looking for the book, look at the author's name because I did not remember them, so I didn't write them down. But The Heir Apparent. This book, from what I can remember, this is a girl who I think she's in college. I'm pretty sure she's in med school, and she lives with her, roommate and stuff. And one day she finds out that she is the granddaughter of the Queen of England. So she is given 1 entire year to decide if she wants to follow through with that side of her life or she wants to ignore it completely and live a normal life. But obviously at this point she wouldn't be able to live a normal life because everyone knows about it. So I think what really to me makes this such a springtime read is this cover. I'm sorry. It's so bright and airy, and also kind of how we talked about with A Man Called Ove, spring to me is about growth, and I feel like we're going to see a lot of self-exploration in this book as well as self-growth, especially in a girl who's probably in her mid-20s, early 20s, and that is how old I am, and I love to read about girls my age finding themselves and becoming the person that they're supposed to be. It's just really inspiring and exciting to read about, and I feel like this book will really provide a lot of that I'm looking for. The next book I have on my spring TBR is Remarkably Bright Creatures. I know I'm probably one of the only people in this world who has not read this book yet, but I know that it has a Netflix show or a Netflix movie, I can't remember which one, but I really want to watch that, so I feel like I really need to read the book before I do so, because it was so popular as the book. I feel like I would be doing a disservice if I didn't actually read the book. And honestly, I don't know much about the book whatsoever. I just know that there's talking animals. I'm gonna read the synopsis to get an actual good description of the book. I don't want to just make something up off the top of my head. Like, isn't this cover so much fun? Like, spring. It's almost been an entire year since I put this on my Goodreads wants to read. That's crazy. Remarkably Bright Creatures, an exploration of friendship, reckoning, and hope. See, that's such a spring. Oh, never mind. I'm not gonna go down those tangents anymore. Tracing a widow's unlikely connection with a giant Pacific octopus. After Tova Sullivan's husband died, she began working the night shift at the Sowell Bay Aquarium, mopping floors and tidying up. Keeping busy has always helped her cope, which she's been doing since her 18-year-old son Eric mysteriously vanished on a boat over 30 years ago. I did not know that storyline in this book. Oh my god. Tova becomes acquainted with Marcellus, a giant Pacific octopus living at the aquarium. Marcellus knows more than anyone can imagine, but wouldn't dream of lifting one of his 8 arms for his human captors, until he forms a remarkable friendship with Tova. Okay, I'm not gonna read anymore, but doesn't that sound so endearing? Also, I am really interested just in literary fiction. I don't know if that's a big theme in this spring TBR. I feel like I'm really reaching towards literary fiction, especially in the spring and summertime. Not necessarily fantasy. There are a few on this list, I'm pretty sure, but I feel like literary fiction and self-exploration, reading about these people who have went through so much, learning and growing, I feel like it's so much fun to read especially just in the summertime. I'm not sure, I think because it's so interesting that you want to just sit down and read, which is the perfect thing to do. Like when you lay out by the pool or just sitting outside in general, it just feels so good. And for me to continue to read for longer than probably 5 minutes, I have to be very entertained. This book sounds very entertaining. There's a talking octopus. Are you kidding? I have to read that book. Okay, next is the second book in the Renegades series by Marissa Meyer. I actually read this book probably 2 years ago in the summertime, and I remember thinking that for some reason it fit so well for summertime. I think there's like a Ferris wheel that she climbs. There's a lot going on in this book, so I don't even really know what the second book is about, and I don't want to talk too much about that because it would be a little spoilery. So we'll talk about the first book. Renegades is one of the few books on this list that isn't just a literary fiction book. So Renegades isn't necessarily fantasy. I guess it would be considered science fiction because it follows a group of superheroes versus villains, and we follow our main girl. Her name is Nova, and she is a villain. She joins the villains because as a child she sees one of the renegades, which are the superheroes in this city. She sees one of the renegades do something very bad that really kind of ruins her family life. So obviously she has this hate and she feels like she needs to get revenge on the renegades. So that's her main goal in this entire book, is to get back at them for doing what they did to her and her family. So it's quite long, but honestly I remember it flew by really well. Marissa Meyer is really good at helping you get through what might seem like to be a complex story, but she writes it in such a young adult way that you get through it really quickly. So I'm really interested in picking this back up, to going back into this world, because it's so much fun, and I feel like it's nothing like anything I've ever read before because it's superheroes, and I feel like that's not something that I get into very often, but I feel like it'd be really fun, especially for the springtime, keep me very entertained, to help me read outside. Water break. My wallet is perfect spring colors. I also wore this pinkish purple shirt because I felt like it was spring colors. Do you agree? The next book I have on my spring TBR is called Sunshine Girls. Honestly, if any of these books don't get read, I could see it being this one only because it is such a summer read, but I am really interested to read it. So we'll see when it gets read, summer or spring, but either way, I'm very, very interested. It is a historical fiction. Let me kind of read you the description a little bit. 1967, Iowa. Nursing school roommates Betty Kay and Kitty don't have much in common. A farmer's daughter, Betty Kay, has risked her family's approval to make her dreams come true away from her small rural town. Cosmopolitan Kitty has always relied on her beauty and smarts to get by and to hide a devastating secret from the past that she can't seem to outrun. Yet the two share a determination to prove themselves in a changing world, forging an unlikely powerful bond on a campus unkind to women. I'm not going to continue because I don't want to spoil anything for myself, but I just feel like that's really interesting. I love reading about stories from that time period, seeing women overcome the challenges that were set before them. Like, one of my favorite books that I read last summer was Lessons in Chemistry, and this is a very good demonstration of that. You see women who want to make it work in this powerful world, but it is very, very hard for them because everyone is rooting against them. And I love seeing them come out on top and beating all the odds. So I'm very excited to see that. Also, I love a friendship dynamic, especially when you see them so differently. It's so interesting to see the way they interact with the world and see how differently they interact with the world and just the way they react to certain things. I'm very excited to read that. I actually tried to find that at Books A Million yesterday. I was talking about that in my vlog. Go watch my vlog if you haven't. I'm filming a week in my life this week, but I was trying so hard to find that because I really want to read it, but I could not find it there, so I'm not really sure if I'll have to order it or maybe just read it as an ebook or something. This next book is my second book on this list. That's a fantasy book, and it is the fourth book in this Woven Kingdom series. Is that what it's called, this Woven Kingdom? I'm not sure if there's a specific title for the series, but this is the fourth book in that series. I got it around Christmas time, and I just wasn't reading it then. I just didn't happen to, but I really want to get to it this spring because, first off, cover, hello, spring, hello, duh. But also, I really love this world that Tahereh Mafi has built. Like with Renegades, I'll kind of talk about the first book so that I don't give anything away. So the first book in this series is This Woven Kingdom by Tahereh Mafi. She is the same author as the Shatter Me books. I don't know if that hits to anyone else the same. Anyways, in this book, called Eliza or Eliza? I'm gonna say Eliza, I hope that's okay. Eliza, and she is a maid at this house of royalty they're considered royalty. And in this world, you see kind of off the bat that Eliza is very different from everyone else in her town or city or the people that she's with. You see that she has things happen to her that aren't necessarily, I don't want to, maybe human-like. It's also very obvious off the bat that she's not supposed to have these things happen to her. She is not allowed to have these things happen to her, so she has to hide it. And that's why she works where she works. You find out very quickly in this book that her parents passed away very tragically, but she got away from the threat that killed her parents. She got away, and all she has been able to do since then is to work as a maid, to do the best that she can. She runs into this young man early on in the book, and they strike up this relationship, friendship, and it possibly leads to more, and he possibly isn't who he says. I really, really recommend reading this book. It is very, I would consider it like Regency era, honestly. The outfits that they wear, the way they act, like, oh no, they can't be seen without an escort and all this, I don't know. I love books like that. Also, I feel like Tahereh Mafi, she does such a great job at writing in that time period because it's so whimsical and it's so beautiful, and her writing is so beautiful. There's so much yearning in this book. You can feel it off of the page. These have such beautiful covers as well. Here's the first book. I'll kind of show it to you. Isn't that pretty? So I would absolutely love to get to this fourth book this springtime. The only thing that's intimidating me is that it is pretty long. Well, actually, it's 460 pages, so it's not too bad. It does look really thick in real life, but the font is big. Her writing is just something I have to sit and really pay attention to because it's very lyrical, it's very beautiful. but I definitely want to get to this book, and I would absolutely recommend the series to anyone who is interested in it. Okay, the next book on this list is The Wedding People. A few months ago, The Wedding People was really big and I didn't read it. Honestly, if you have seen my videos, I don't know why I don't read books in their hype. I wait until it's after. I feel like whenever I read a book and it's popular, I am so skewed by other people's opinions, so I kind of have to force myself to wait. And I feel like the hype has died down around The Wedding People, and so I'm very excited to get to it. I actually started it as an audiobook a few weeks ago. I got a copy of that from the library, and so I had been listening to it. I think I'm about like 15-20% through. I was enjoying it, honestly, just kind of was in a slump and kind of forgot I was listening to it. But in this book, you follow this woman who, it says right after COVID, and she really had a hard time during COVID. She's a professor at a college, and if you were in school during COVID, you would know there was no school, everything was online school, and she felt very isolated, and she was really struggling during that time. So the book starts off very heavy. I would absolutely recommend reading the trigger warnings for this book, because if you are sensitive to certain things, do not read it. Do not, because it is very heavy from the beginning. She goes to this hotel that she has seen for years that she feels like is a happy place for her, even though she's never been. Just something drawing her there, and she goes to this hotel because she has plans that she is going to end her life. And like I said, if that in some way makes you triggered or feel any type of way, please do not read it, because it is very heavy at the beginning. She gets to this hotel, and everyone at the hotel is there for a specific reason, and it is because there's a wedding happening that weekend. And our main character, she meets the bride, and the bride is very she acts very stereotypically a bride. Like, the only thing that matters to her in this moment is her wedding. So whenever our main character tells her why she's at the hotel, the only reaction that this bride has is like, you're literally gonna ruin my wedding. And so our main character, she's kind of like, well, you deserve it. So, and then that's kind of where I actually ended up on the book. But I really want to get back into it, because I've heard that there's just a lot of growth that happens in this book, and there's just an unlikely friendship that happens, and I really am interested to see what the hype was all about, but I just couldn't read it during its hype because like I said, I'm very skewed by public opinion. I'm sorry, I'm not good at that, honestly. The next book I want to read this spring is The Women by Kristen Hanna. If you've seen any of my videos, I love Kristen Hanna. I have a video literally ranking every single book that I've ever read by Kristen Hanna, but the only book that I haven't read by her that like has a lot of hype and stuff like that is The Women, and that is because that book is still only published in hardcover. And honestly, like, I'm getting to the point where I'm about to just pull the trigger and just get over it and read it in hardcover, because I want to read it that bad. It's such a thick book, so I know it's going to be so annoying to read in hardcover. I don't know, like, Kristen Hanna, if you're watching this, please send me The Women in paperback. Like, I'll do anything. I'll literally do anything. Let me read the description. Can you tell I'm really passionate about this? Like, it's just something about it. I can't explain it. It's just so heavy and When 20-year-old nursing student Frankie McGrath hears these words, it is a revelation. Raised in the sun-drenched, idyllic world of Southern California and sheltered by her conservative parents, she's always prided herself on doing the right thing. But in 1965, the world is changing, and she suddenly dares to imagine a different future for herself. When her brother ships out to serve in Vietnam, she joins the Army Nurse Corps and follows his path. As green and inexperienced as the men sent to Vietnam to fight, Frankie is overwhelmed by the chaos and destruction of war. Okay, I'm not going to continue with the description, but that's kind of the very, very loose premise. I love Kristen Hanna's specifically historical fiction, and obviously the Vietnam War is extremely brutal. So I can't even imagine the things that this poor girl is going to go through and have to suffer through and suffer with for the rest of her life. But I know that Kristen Hanna is going to write it in a very beautiful way, and we're going to follow her through this tough path, but we're going to see her come out learning something. And I know that every time I read one of her books, I come away with a very big lesson for me personally to learn. They always fill me with such deep emotion. That to me is why she's so set apart from other authors, for me specifically. So I'm very excited to read this book, but I just want to read it on paperback. Like, is that such a big ask? Okay, and there are 3 books that I want to reread this springtime. And the first one, I will say, I actually already did reread this because I was very excited to do so. And that is the 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. I've kind of talked about this multiple places, so I don't want to go too into it. But this is one of the romance books that I read a few years ago that I actually truly really loved. There's something about the writing in this book that feels so different from any of the romance books that I've read. And I'm not really sure what it is, but I feel like you can just feel the love between these 2 main characters off of the page. Like, it almost, to me, reminds me so much of the love that I feel for my husband in real life. Like, there's so many quotes in here that I've underlined. I'm not sure if you can really tell, but these are pages that I have dog-eared in this book, and those are pages or scenes or whatever it is that I really enjoyed, or things that I underlined. I tried to dog-ear the page so I could kind of go back easier. This story is so beautiful. It's a magical realism book, but it has a very heavy plot of romance. So this book follows Clementine, and Clementine, the book starts off where her aunt has just passed away. Her and her aunt are very close. They travel all over the world together, and Clementine is a publicist for a very big company in New York City. And her aunt told her as a child that her apartment that she lives in has this big secret. And Clementine, as a kid, of course, believes her, but as she gets older, she's like, obviously she was kidding. And the secret is that the apartment that she lives in sometimes time travels back 7 years exactly. And whenever Clementine's aunt passes away, she leaves the apartment to her. So she moves in, and one of the first days that she moves in, she walks in, there's a man in her apartment, and she's terrified, obviously. That's where we kind of start off with, but there's just so much more to this book that sounds like a very quirky, rom-com-y, I don't know, but this book is so much more than that to me. There's friendships explored, there's love that's stretched over 7 years, there's yearning, and there's how to love someone as you grow and you change. I'm gonna read you a few quotes. If quotes bother you, skip through this. I will not be offended because they sometimes bother me too. This says, because I wouldn't get tired of looking at his face for years, decades. I wanted to watch it age. I wanted to see what kind of wrinkles knitted into his smile. Okay, this was, to me, this is just the overall theme of this book that I thought was so beautiful that I love. That was love, wasn't it? It wasn't just a quick drop. It was falling over and over again for your person. It was falling as they become new people. It was learning how to exist with every new breath. It was uncertain, and it was undeniably hard, and it wasn't something that you could plan for. There's just so much more to this book than just a cheesy tagline and a quirky, fun rom-com idea. There's just so much more to this book, and I feel like I never really have that with romance books, but I felt it with this one, and I felt it again on the second reread. I literally read this in less than 24 hours. I couldn't put it down. I absolutely recommend this, and so I already have reread that this spring, but there are 2 more that I want to reread this spring. This is a book that I reread every single spring/summer, so if I don't reread it this spring, I will reread it in summer. It's just a tradition that I have with myself, and that is Twilight by Stephanie Meyer. I'm not really sure why I have reread this book. I talk about it in my comfort video. This book is just something that I would reread before I started school every year. So it was like every year around July to August, I would reread this book because it was such a comfort to me. And in my real life, I was going through things that would stress me out and would give me lots of anxiety. So it felt like what I was reading was one of the few things that I could control. So it kind of provided me lots of peace. And so that is something that I love about Twilight, is that this story is so cheesy. And I know it so well that I know that if anything's going on in my life, I can reread Twilight and I will feel 100 times better. So who knows if I'll get to it this spring, but I will get to it this spring or summertime because it is just a tradition that I have with myself. And I'm not gonna explain Twilight to you because if you don't know that story, then you need to go read this next book. The last book I have in my spring TBR is Lovely War. This book is the first book that I read last year in 2025. This is such a beautiful, beautiful book. The writing in this book is so wonderful. It almost kind of reminds me of 7 Year Slip, but Lovely Wharf is a historical fiction, but it also does take place on different timelines and different POVs. You follow different people in different areas of this one specific war period. But I don't own this book physically, and so I want so badly to buy it and to read it again physically because I have so much I would love to underline, to annotate. It's just, this is a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful story. It is narrated by Greek gods, which is so funny and random. It's a Greek god telling her friends, which are also Greek gods, the story about these two lovers during a wartime. And so to them, it's a story, so they feel it the same way we do, where it's kind of funny, where it's kind of ironic, but it's also so beautiful and so realistic. But you also follow multiple people during this terrible time of war, and you see how it affects certain people, and you also see during these time periods a lot of people were treated differently than they should have been. There are so many terrible things done to certain people that should never have been done to anyone, but because they were done in such a malicious, prejudicial way, you see the effects of that. You see what people were going through during these. It's just, this is a beautiful love story between many different couples over many decades. It's so heartwarming to me. Sorry for the angle change. It's so heartwarming to me, and I want to own this book physically because I want to annotate it so badly. Also, it has a beautiful cover. Like, that pink color is stunning. Kind of matches my beautiful, beautiful real flowers. And so that is the last book on my spring TBR. I'm so excited to get to all of these books. If you've read any of them, please let me know because I could use a little extra motivation always to read certain books. But thank you so much for watching this video. I really truly appreciate it. If you have any other spring books that are on your physical TBR or regular TBR, just let me know because I also am always down to read other books and what's on my TBR. If any of you watched my winter TBR, you will see that half of those books actually didn't get read. So that's really awkward, but I'm doing my best. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate it so much. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your morning, day, night, afternoon, whatever it is. I love you. Bye.